In a dense and mysterious forest, a young girl named Anne walked slowly along a narrow trail, carrying a heavy backpack filled with unanswered questions. She had heard tales of a hermit who lived deep in the mountains, someone said to hold the secret to finding inner peace. Determined, Anne set out on this strange journey. What she didn't expect was that the greatest challenge would come from the very things she thought she understood best. And wasn't someone who blindly believed in the mystical. As a young scholar passionate about Eastern culture, she had spent most of her time buried in ancient texts, taking notes on legends long buried under the dust of time. And yet, one thing continued to trouble her, a persistent sense of emptiness and unease within her soul, despite all the knowledge she had acquired. That was why she found herself here, in this primeval forest shrouded in morning mist, a place once said to be home to a hermit who could help people find true inner peace. From a faded passage in an old handwritten manuscript, Anne traced a path that led her to a remote region deep within the sacred mountains. She didn't know exactly where the hermit was, she wasn't even sure he truly existed, but something compelled her to keep going. Perhaps it was a fragile hope, or simply the quiet desperation of a mind longing to escape its tangled thoughts. The backpack she carried wasn't just filled with supplies, it held an ancient book she intended to offer the hermit as a gift, a silent token of gratitude if she truly managed to find him. The forest air was thick and damp, and light barely pierced through the dense canopy above. The deeper she went, the more strangely still everything became, as if time itself had gotten lost here. Suddenly, just off the side of the path, a small figure appeared among the trees, an old man, thin and fragile, sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, like a fossil etched into the forest. And stopped, surprised. He didn't look like an ordinary person. His every breath seemed to melt into the air, as though he had been part of this place for a very long time. She stepped closer and gently asked, "Excuse me. I'm looking for a hermit who lives in this forest. Do you know where I can find him?" The old man slowly opened his eyes, deep, calm, like the surface of a still lake. He looked at Anne and spoke in a warm, steady voice. "The one you seek is not far. But tread carefully, for there is a very special creature in these woods. It's not dangerous unless fear is what guides you. If that happens, you may lose your way." And nodded, thanked him, and continued on her path. But inside, something unfamiliar had begun to stir, a feeling that was equal parts curiosity and unease, as if she were no longer simply searching for someone, but stepping into a place where she would have to confront herself. The path grew narrower the deeper and went into the forest, with branches intertwining as if deliberately trying to block the steps of an outsider. She gently pushed aside the leaves and twigs, trying to stay calm, but the old man's warning echoed in her mind, "If fear guides you, you may lose your way." The deeper she ventured, the more surreal the surroundings became. It wasn't just the typical stillness of a dense forest, it was an uncanny silence, as if something unseen was watching her from behind the moss-covered roots of ancient trees. Even the sounds of birds and wind had faded. At times, she felt like she was being followed. But every time she turned around, she found only motionless bushes and still air. A cold gust swept through, sending a shiver down her spine. She tightened the straps of her backpack, feeling every beat of her heart. Still, her curiosity outweighed her fear. Maybe this is just the first test, she told herself. And she kept moving forward, step by step, over a trail scattered with roots and dry leaves. After winding around a bend, a small hut came into view, nestled beneath the largest tree she had ever seen. Its walls were made of leaves and decaying wood, its roof blanketed in green moss, as if time itself had forgotten it existed. Strangely, the unease in her chest began to ease. Something about this place felt oddly familiar, comforting even. Just as she was about to approach, a low, heavy sound came from the bushes behind her. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, as if the ground itself trembled slightly with each step. And spun around, her heart pounding wildly. From the shadows emerged a creature, large-bodied, covered in thick ash-gray fur. Its form resembled that of a great feline, but its eyes glowed with a strange, cold, alien blue. Whatever it was, and instantly knew one thing: it was moving toward her, its gaze locked on the backpack on her shoulders. Fear hit her like a crashing wave. Without thinking, she backed away, then turned and ran, stumbling over the uneven path, the backpack bouncing against her. In her panic, it slipped off her shoulder and tumbled to the ground, left behind in the creature's path. She didn't look back. All she could do was run, her mind a whirlwind of emotion, confusion, regret, fear, and disappointment. Everything she had worked for, all the careful planning, the knowledge she had gathered, it all felt like it had crumbled in a single, terrifying moment. Was the old man right? Had her fear conjured the very danger she now fled? Eventually, she stopped, far from the clearing, gasping for breath, hand clutching her chest. But then, she heard footsteps behind her. Soft, unhurried. No growl. No chase. Just a warm, steady voice breaking the silence. You dropped something. And turned around, her heart still pounding in her chest. Standing before her was an old man with silver hair, dressed in a simple robe. His eyes were gentle yet piercing, as if they could see straight through her. In his hands was her backpack, the very thing she had dropped while fleeing from the strange creature. He smiled and said, "I'm the one you've been looking for. And that creature that frightened you, it wasn't a threat." And stood there, unsure what to say, her eyes instinctively glancing toward the woods where the creature had appeared. As if reading her thoughts, the old man continued, "It never meant you harm. It was only drawn to something you were carrying." He gently opened the backpack and pulled out the old book and had intended to offer. As he did, a small piece of paper slipped out from between the pages and floated to the ground, and bent down to pick it up and froze. Wrapped inside the paper was a strip of dried meat, something she had packed that morning for the journey and completely forgotten about. It followed you the moment the scent of meat reached it, the hermit said. It wasn't interested in you, only in what you were carrying. And stood still, a wave of quiet shame washing over her, not because she had been afraid, but because her fear had distorted the truth. She had seen danger where there was none. The creature hadn't been a threat, just a hungry being drawn by something simple, food. The old man stepped closer, handing back her backpack. You see, he said gently, the world doesn't always work the way we think it does. What frightens us often isn't the thing itself, but the way we perceive it. And bowed her head in silent gratitude. It felt as though a thick veil in her mind had just lifted, revealing a truth both simple and profound. It's our perception, not reality, that shapes how we experience the world. The hermit gestured for her to follow him into the small hut beneath the ancient tree. The hut was humble, yet filled with a peaceful aura. There were no Buddha statues, no incense, no sacred scriptures, only simple tools and a few dusty silk cloths. He placed the old book gently on the table, brushing the cover with his fingers as if it were a treasured keepsake. You came here looking for peace, didn't you? He asked. I nodded. He gave a soft, knowing smile. Then sit. But before you understand peace, you must first learn to understand yourself. And sat down, silent. In that moment, she was no longer just a scholar searching for external knowledge, she was someone beginning a journey inward, one she had never imagined would matter this much. And sat across from the hermit inside the quiet, humble hut nestled deep in the forest. Soft beams of light filtered through the leaves above, casting a dappled glow on the mossy ground, as if time itself had slowed. Though her heart still echoed with the events earlier, a strange sense of calm was beginning to seep in, not because of the place, but because of the serene presence of the old man before her. Why weren't you afraid of that creature? And finally asked, breaking the silence. Because I've learned to observe rather than react, the hermit replied. The truth, you see, is often simple. But the human mind has a habit of complicating things, especially when it's guided by fear or expectation. He poured her a cup of warm tea, brewed from forest leaves. Its taste was slightly bitter, yet refreshingly clean. Somehow, it seemed to calm her spirit, as if even the drink was part of the lesson. You came here in search of peace, he said slowly. But have you ever asked yourself, what does true peace really mean? Is it the absence of trouble, or is it the ability to remain centered in the midst of it? And stayed quiet. That wasn't the kind of question she was used to, the kind that came with footnotes and theories. This one pierced deeper, aimed at essence, not intellect. You ran because you believed the creature was a threat, he continued. But it didn't attack you. It didn't do anything threatening. You panicked because your mind created a scenario, then believed in it without questioning. And it was that reaction, not the creature, that caused the turmoil. And looked down at her hands, replaying the moment she ran in fear. A wave of shame passed through her, but so did something else, clarity. I don't blame you, the hermit said gently. You've just stepped into your first real lesson, realizing that reality is rarely what we imagine it to be. The mind must learn to listen before it judges. He stood and stepped outside. Unfollowed. Before them, the forest opened into a clearing, and in the distance, the strange creature was ambling away. In the midday light, it no longer looked frightening. In fact, it appeared a bit clumsy, even lost. Not a monster, just an animal. Do you see now? The old man smiled. We fear the dark not because of what it is, but because of what we think hides within it. And said nothing. But something stirred inside her, not emptiness, but understanding. She realized that more often than not, suffering doesn't come from the situation itself, but from the name we give it, the story we create around it. In the quiet stillness of the forest that afternoon, she understood she had just crossed a threshold. There was no magic, no grand revelation, but something profound had shifted. And that alone made the world feel different. Late afternoon slowly descended upon the forest. The last rays of sunlight scattered softly across the damp earth, making the dewdrops on the leaves glisten like tiny jewels. Anne and the hermit sat side by side beneath the ancient tree canopy, saying nothing more. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable. Instead, it was full, as if every passing moment was being deeply felt and fully lived. And gazed into the distance, toward the place where the strange creature had disappeared into the forest. She no longer felt fear, only a strange tenderness, a quiet sense of connection. She recalled the hermit's words. We don't fear the dark because of the dark itself, but because of what we think might be hiding in it. And now, with all her worries melted away, the darkness was simply darkness. Just another part of life's natural rhythm. Master, she asked softly, how can I keep this peace within me, once I return to the outside world, with all its noise and chaos? The hermit turned to her, his gaze both gentle and unwavering. You don't need to keep peace as if it's something you might lose. What you need to learn is how to return to peace whenever you've been pulled away from it. That's why you must train your mind daily, to observe, to become aware, and to let go when it's time. Anne nodded. His words weren't dressed in religion or lofty theory. They were simple truths, born from experience, real, grounding, like sunlight, like breath. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke through the forest, and packed her things, She bowed deeply to the hermit before leaving. "Thank you, not just for welcoming me, but for helping me see myself," she said. He smiled and handed her a small cloth pouch filled with herbs. "Take this as a reminder. But remember, the most important thing you'll carry isn't in your backpack. It's in your mind." The path back out of the forest no longer felt heavy. And walked slowly, mindfully listening to each sound, feeling each gust of wind, watching every movement of the leaves. She no longer hoped the world outside would change. Instead, what had changed was the way she now saw it. When she reached the edge of the forest and turned back one last time, the forest was as still as when she had entered, but to her, it had become something more, a turning point. Not a destination, but a moment of transformation. She knew life ahead would still bring challenges, misunderstandings, and more creatures to face. But instead of panicking, she would pause, observe, and ask herself, "Am I reacting to reality, or just to the fear inside my own mind?" And stepped out of the forest with a lighter heart and an invaluable lesson. Peace isn't a place to arrive at. It's the way you choose to walk through the world.